अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय.
Let us start on the New Year's journey of Sobs and Throbs. We start with chapter 12, but before that, we'll start with My Wish. Ashokji, you want to read?
Yeah, Avatar, Meher Baba ki jai. My wish. The lover has to keep the wish of the beloved. My wish for my lovers is as follows. 1. Do not shirk your responsibilities. 2. Attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but keep back.
Oh, there's something in one of the mics.
Okay, mine.
Yes, it's yours.
2. Attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but
Yes.
always keep at the back of your mind that all this is Baba's. 3. When you feel happy, think Baba wants me to be happy. When you suffer, think Baba wants me to suffer. 4. Be resigned to every situation and think honestly and sincerely. Baba has placed me in this situation. 5. With the understanding that Baba is in everyone, try to help and serve others. 6. I say with my divine authority to each and all that whosoever takes my name at the time of breathing his last comes to me, so do not forget to remember me in your last moments. Unless you start remembering me from now on, it will be difficult to remember me when your end approaches. You should start practicing from now on. Even if you take my name only once every day, you will not forget to. Can you raise this, Karthik? Uh,
Yeah.
to remember me in your dying moments. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Jai Baba. Thanks for reading that. I hope, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I think, like I said, good to see everybody back in the new year. Hope you all had a great week already of 2024. And let us start with Sobs and Throbs. Any thoughts before we get into the reading? No
No,
thoughts, responses. We are
yeah.
ready for the sobs and we are ready for the throbs. And what our hero is up to uh, wh- when he's coming again, right? So that's the point in the story where we left it last year, I should say. So let's pick it up from there. So if you remember on where we are on the story, uh, so we had read up to page 88 on the physical book, which is we finished up to 11, 11 on the chapters. So we start from chapter 12, and the story is Truth Tells, right? So with that, let's continue. Honestly, let me try reading for a bit, and then I will lean on both of you to help by rotating the reading. Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay. Jai Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Chapter 12. Truth Tells. The dawn of the 3rd of March smiled on Meherabad as usual, but there was hardly a face that was smiling that morning. It was the last day of the 7 days of grace. There were many who thought it was the last day of the Meher Ashram's brilliant but short life. None cared to look at the figure of a boy hastening up the hill in all earnest at about 7:30 in the morning. The figure went straight to the master's seat without even exchanging a single word or glance with anybody. Needless to say, it was the hero. For all the violent beats of his heart, Ali was considerate enough to remain quiet and collected by the main front window of the master's upper room, taking every care to avoid disturbance to the master, who had not yet come out of his retirement. It did not take long for Mr. Afseri to find out Ali's presence there, since he was one of the attendants over the love-lorn boys and was generally required to be present near the master's seat early every morning. To say he was pleased is a poor compliment to him. I would like to say Afseri simply went mad with joy at this unexpected sight of the hero, whom he succeeded in persuading in accompanying him to the dining hall. Let me see Baba first, was the gist of all that Ali could say then. The boy looked the very picture of a fish out of water for the sight of the master. You will see him presently, Afseri assured him, but take a little refreshment. There was no need for the boy to say he had been fasting all these days. His sunken eyes and haggard looks were enough to disclose the fact. Ali obeyed his teacher's word and partook of a little from the bowl of cream offered to him, evidently to please his very kind teacher rather than enjoy it himself. The news of the hero's return spread in the whole of the colony faster than the wind and caused many a heart to take a sigh of relief. At about 8 o'clock, the master came out of his retirement. But here, my pen is simply powerless to keep pace with my thoughts in describing the touching scene that followed. Rather, it is the work of a poet or a painter. I would say this much, that for about half an hour, the master of divinity and the slave of love were one in each other's arms. However, when it was generally known that Ali's appearance at Mehrabad was due to his having taken French leave, and not as the result of his father's common sense and fidelity to his word of honor, the presence of the hero was not considered as quite a very happy one. He could not be considered as having returned to the Meher Ashram, but was simply an uninvited but very welcome guest of the master. The main question was still in the balance, and the master too continued conveying the threat that if Ali remains, all remain. If he goes, everything goes. Yet, for the time being, the immediate black clouds over the colony were dispelled, as no time limit now remained fixed for the dismantling of the noble institution. The master went beyond the expectation of and all at Mehrabad in according a rousing reception to Ali on this memorable day. First of all, the boy was presented with a fine and rich embroidered shawl to be put on his shabby dress, since the ashram uniform could not be given to him in the absence of his father's consent. Then Ali was garlanded and taken round the school by the master, who kept him all the time by his side. At dinner time, the master made Ali and some of his other little lovers sit around him and fed them all with his own august hands, just as a proud mother would feed her happy children. Ali, of course, got the lion's share of the master's attention. Morsels of food made specially rich with addition of fresh butter were shoveled into the hero's mouth by the master to the point of almost overfeeding him. By this time, the only somber point that marred the happy situation faded away in the bright ray of hope that reached Mehrabad in the shape of an yellow envelope. It contained a telegraphic message from the gentleman whom the master had sent to Bombay only the other day, and as mentioned in the last chapter by way of an example of the master's peculiar workings, the message said, Ali's father willing to sign. That is, sign a fresh bond of agreement to let Ali remain in the Meher Ashram for a fixed period. The peculiar action had proved a prophetic work. The boy had arrived here, and the ashram emissary had reached there just in time to strike the iron when it was hot. After the receipt of this telegram, the atmosphere became all the more cheerful and bright. The master, too, seemed to have become quite free of his concerned looks regarding the future, and one of the disciples suggested the possibility of an 11th hour failure. The master only smiled and said that it's all right now. In the evening, the master once again allowed himself to be dressed fantastically in the guise of that picturesque but no less perfect Hindu master Krishna by his little lovers, just as he had done on the 28th February, the third day of separation, as if by way of rehearsal for this very occasion, and went around the colony keeping all prominently by his side. The master even went to the length of taking out the crown and placing the same on Ali's head for some time. Then again, for an hour or so, Ali transformed into a fairy tale picture by the master, who made him put on some multicolored brocades and led him round the playground where the rest of the ashramites were enjoying their daily recreation. In short, throughout that day, the master and Ali were found together side by side, and the latter was constantly eulogized by the master in the presence of all. The next day, the question of R.K. Irani's proposed visit to Europe, which had been shelved during these few tumultuous days, was put up for discussion, and the gentleman was finally instructed to finish up the arrangements for setting out on this memorable mission. All's well that ends well is no doubt true, but the disastrous results that emanate from all before it ends well are not always easily blotted out. In writing about Ali's return to Mehrabad, I have so far been trying to make the best of a bad bargain, but I can no longer help turning the other side of the coin. Although Ali had returned, and once again there were prospects of the revival of the divine blaze of love, yet that something had seriously gone amiss in the master's internal working could not be denied. One of the master's earlier remarks in this connection, it will all have to be done afresh, led us to think that the mishap caused in his workings through the untimely forced exit of Ali from the institution almost amounted to a complete disruption of them. Hence, no wonder that along with the holiday atmosphere on this day, 4th of March, the second day of Ali's return, the boys and disciples were greatly pained at the sight of the master's inexplicable yet very prominent fits of agonies. Now and then, the master looked as if suffering from some terrible shocks internally, since otherwise there was no sign of any physical illness about his person. The two most prominent and the most terrible of such peculiar fits were witnessed at about 3:30 in the afternoon and at 9 o'clock at night, respectively. Each of these shocks lasted for about 45 minutes, and during these periods, the master seemed to be almost in the grips of death and was seen simply writhing in pain all the time from an unseen malady. Just pausing here to ask a question. So, is around the 4th of March, it's not the period of Krishna Jayanti, right? Krishna Jayanti is much later in the year. 4th of March is closer to Ramanavami.
No, Jayanti will be, Krishna Jayanti will be around August.
August, September, exactly. Yeah, that's what I thought. So this is closer to Ramanavami, but then 2 times Baba has worn the Krishna costume. I don't know why. Okay. Let's see what happens. I continue. That same evening, when almost all had retired for the night, the long expected gentleman, Ali's father, at last turned up. There are very few who know as to what transpired on that fateful night. In spite of all that had happened and all that he had heard, Mr. Syed Haji Muhammad proved no less unreasonable than he was on the day on which he snatched away Ali from the ashram. It was Mr. Afseri again who had to grapple with this personification of silly prejudices for 6 solid hours that night. From 11 o'clock at night till the early hours of the dawn, the duel of words continued between the two. This time, Ali's father's main complaint was that it was owing to the ashram authorities' tutoring and underhand tricks that Ali had run away from him. But he could not prove that simply because it was a pure falsehood and imagination based on rumors and prejudiced conclusions. In the end, the stubborn unreasonableness of the gentleman was too much even for the patient Afseri. He gave up further reasoning and persuasions with a final remark. For God's sake, take away your son. We have had enough trouble about him. Neither the master, nor the institution, nor anyone amongst us, the workers, are out to gain anything in the least from the boy's presence here. On the contrary, it is for his own benefit that we have been trying so strenuously. No good will come out of his forced stay here. And concluding this last sentence, he actually walked away from the place to report the breakup of the negotiations to the master. However, these simple but true words hit the mark. This time, it was Ali's father who had to play the part of a pleader. He at once sent somebody in the wake of the exasperated Afseri, who was already halfway to the master's seat. The latter came back, but was now on the warpath. What do you want? Why did you call me back? Were the two curt enquiries with which he greeted Ali's father in place of his polite pleadings and persuasions that he had almost exhausted during the last sitting. Ali's father seemed to be struggling between two opposite emotions, and in this excitement, it did not take long for him to blurt out one of the real causes underlying his insistence in taking away Ali from the ashram. I believe, said he, there's nothing wrong here, and that you mean good for my boy, but you don't know that of taunts me and talks about this institution. Let me read that line again. There's something wrong. I believe, said he, there is nothing wrong here, and that you mean good for my boy, but you don't know how that of taunts me and talks about this institution. What a pity, cried out Afseri, that just because a good for nothing busybody talks nonsense, you forget to use your own common sense. It was now nearly 5 o'clock in the morning, the time for the ashramites, including the hero, who had been sleeping all the while, quite unaware of the trouble going on for his sake, to get up. That his father at last signed the stamped bond, agreeing not to remove Ali from the Meher Ashram for 1 year under any circumstances. After this happy ending of the all-night conference, Mr. Afseri went to report the same to the master, and as expected, found him waiting patiently in the upper room. The master had remained seated the whole night and only retired to the lower chamber after having heard Mr. Afseri's final report. Truth tells, but has to suffer too. As soon as the first morning bell made the Ashramite boys come out of their beds, Ali was given the good news. But still, it was a task to persuade him to see his father. However, he was conducted down the hill and presented to his father. At first, the latter tried to bluff him and said some harsh words. But Ali remained calm and collected, and in no uncertain terms denied any tutoring and trick on the part of the ashram authorities. Father, I like to stay here, was the main burden of his song. With the departure of Ali's father that same morning, the atmosphere became once again normal, and preparations for a picnic party in celebration of the happy occasion were begun in right earnest. The following day, the 6th of March, according to the fine prearrangements, the master, boys, teachers, and disciples all drove in specially engaged motor buses to the Happy Valley, the most scenic spot about Ahmednagar, at a distance of about 15 miles from Mehrabad. It is rightly remembered as the Aga Ali Day, and a great holiday it was, especially for the boys. They were allowed the freedom of playing and strolling all over the beautiful valley throughout that day. Besides a special dinner and supper, the boys were also treated with tea and dainty eatables in the afternoon. But the particularly delightful events were when the master personally led the boys for a ramble through the hills twice that day. He sprinted and scampered here and there with the boys as if he were actually one of them, and sent many a thrill of boyish glee into their little hearts, and thus proved his perfection from yet another point of view, which is so prettily conveyed by Swami Vivekananda in these fine words. And I quote, the true, the true teacher, Sadguru Kutub, is he who brings himself from the height of God realization down to the level of the student, sees through the student's eyes, hears through the student's ears. But this delight was greatly marred by the apparent mishap in the evening when the master set out for a second ramble. After going for about a mile right through the heart of the valley, he suddenly became very indisposed. Before anyone could even guess as to what happened, the master was all limp and almost superconscious. Superconscious has an asterisk, and the asterisk reference is right next to it. When Hazrat Babajan of Pune was pleased to bless the master with a glance of grace in the year 1914, he became all at once superconscious, but it was in the year 1921 that his second Guru, Sadguru Upasni Maharaj, restored to him the consciousness of the mental, subtle, and gross planes. Since then, His Holiness had always been in the superconscious plus complete gross conscious state, which is called the Sahaj Samadhi, and which the Holy Quran calls the state of Kamila, that is the perfected. I think there's a chapter reference XC 1.7. And such a fit of losing only the gross consciousness implies no change or difference in that ever continuous state of Sahaj Samadhi. It appeared to be one of the divine fits with which the master seemed to have been affected now and then since Ali was snatched away. But the present one was far greater in severity than the previous ones, inasmuch as the master had actually to be carried back to the dark bungalow on the disciple's shoulders and came to a normal state long after sunset. From the 7th of March 1928, the atmosphere once again became quite normal at Meher Ashram. Mr. R.K. Irani left Mehrabad that evening for Bombay, whence he proceeded to England on the 10th of that month. But with all this, quite a lull came over the place in the matter of divine conflagration, which no longer was there. Not that the hearts already affected were cooled down, but the spectacular conflagration gave place to silent smoldering, which again remained restricted to a particular few without affecting others as it did in the month of January last. In the course of the discussion on the 19th of March 1928, already mentioned in chapter 1, the master had also conveyed these sparks of love that have been sprinkled can never be put out. Some kindling through personal efforts is necessary. Once kindled sufficiently, instead of dying out, it will go on increasing automatically without even thinking about it, and to such a pitch that one affected with it will desire nothing save the cooling down of its heat. Just see Ali Akbar. Now you will understand what he means by often repeating, I don't want God, I don't want anything. Only cool down this all consuming fire in my heart. And that's Ali's statement. To cool this heat or fire means to render the person unconscious.
Sorry, hold on.
Yeah, Mahmood.
This is Ali Akbar. This one is different. This one is Ali Akbar Shah
Oh, yes,
Khurram,
thank you.
which is, yeah.
Yes, thank
And
you.
the
It's
other
Ali
one
Akbar.
is Aga Ali, yeah.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Correct. So this is Ali Akbar. So now you'll understand what he means by often repeating, and I repeat Ali Akbar's statement. I don't want God, I don't want anything, only cool down this all consuming fire in my heart. To cool this heat or fire means to render the person unconscious, and this is the intermediate state between heat and light. But I am not going to cool it down just yet. The last stage, light, means after becoming unconscious, they, those who are burning with the heat of love, will see the light of love, and when they become conscious again after gaining the final sight of experience, the light of love will remain, but the heat of love of the first stage will vanish away automatically. No
Just
more
one second.
suffering.
Pause.
Sure, sure.
These are said by Baba. I'm not going to cool it down just yet. The last stage light means. Is this explanation by
Yes,
Baba?
yes. The master
The master
also
also conveyed. So this is a code.
from
This
Baba.
is okay. So we're just uh, waiting for the closing code. So that's what the master said.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll continue from
And
here.
can you
I'll
do
repeat.
it a little bit slower? These are very important words. I can't.
Sure. So in fact, I'll read again from the beginning of this page.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will slow down a little bit. Yes. I am not going to cool it down just yet. The last stage, light, means after becoming unconscious, they, those who are burning with the heat of love, will see the light of love. And when they become conscious again, after gaining the final sight of experience, the light of love will remain, but the heat of love of the first stage will vanish away automatically. No more sufferings and agonies then. That is what is going to be done in due course of time. Let us see what comes out of the message to the West. Of course, no more spark sprinkling now. Another way, turning the eyes of the newcomers, in brackets, giving them the light of love without making them pass through the heat of love simultaneously with the old ones at the same time, at the time of giving the final touch through the link of a boy amongst these little lovers. Ali is the link through whom newcomers will also get the light of love.
So this is end quote. So Baba's words is just if you don't mind, I make a comment.
Sure.
I thought it would be nice if we, Baba's talk here is not as much. Mostly Ramjoo is talking, but um, can maybe we can discuss or just at least make a few comments about heat of love and light of love. Did you
No, no,
get that?
absolutely. No, no, absolutely. In fact, I wanted to discuss because I quite didn't understand this, and Baba has not used this phraseology elsewhere,
Yeah.
light, heat, consciousness, because he's saying that light of love is replaced, I mean, the heat of love is replaced with light of love, and the light of love will remain, but the heat will go away. And he's saying that you go to unconsciousness between these states. So I don't think I have come across this kind of description anywhere else. Anybody else has any comments or thoughts?
I think these were very specific for the Premashram boys. That junction of Bobo's work, what he was getting done with through these boys, um, is related to that. Because, like we would hear, now I get more idea here, that they were just getting, so much illumined by the love that Baba was giving them that they fall unconscious for a couple days. And then when they come back to the normal consciousness, they were all dazed and, just drowned in the Baba's love. And the pictures are there. But now I can understand how Baba is explaining it. It's a stage by stage, apparently. Yeah.
Correct. Uh, any other thoughts? Others?
This sort of an experience that is explained here by Baba was done in the very early stages. But later on, is there any example of this sort of an interactive experience that is shared later after these episodes of ashram, school, and small boys gathering together? Baba, is there any reference like this episodes later?
We don't
I'm
know.
not. Yeah, I am not aware. See, again, I am severely challenged, and I am not anywhere close to
Yes,
authoritatively commenting on this, because I have not mastered the timeline yet. But what I can clearly see is this phase, and again, I am leaning heavily on Ward Park's introduction of the books and this period of Baba's life, right? So if you look back at Baba's life, you had the Manzile days, where it was the first establishment of the relationship of master and Mandali, and there was a lot of firmness. In fact, intense firmness. Firmness is a weak word. He was in the Jalali phase of being the Murshid, the Guru, with a lot of physical and oral and instructions which were very strong. That was Manzile Meme. But then the Mandali stuck around, and then from there, Baba was obviously attempting something different in this phase, which I don't think he repeated again. I'm not aware, as I said, I'm not aware authoritatively. But in this phase, the focus was something that he was doing with souls, which was either, no, I wouldn't say even either. It's symbolic to the larger creation construct, right? So obviously it's symbolic to everybody, and he was doing something with these boys, which was special, and it was only the heart. It was more the heart than anything else. My humble assessment based on all the stuff that I've heard from others.
Uh, I can make a comment.
Please.
My understanding from this period of Baba's work, and also, by the way, this message to the West is very, very important message, and Ward is part of Ward's presentation always, and Baba here talks about it. During this time, there wasn't Well, the only reason I talk about it because I heard it from one Prem Ashram boy who lived in Los Angeles for almost 5 years. And we would go to meeting with him and he would talk about different incidents and how Baba was treating them and so forth. And he was spiritually very, very advanced. Probably one more lifetime, according to what it was said to him. But this period, even what K. Khosrow Afzari as a teacher was teaching them, that was just the beginning. Yeah, just some poetry, Persian poetry or mystic poetry or even Kabir. But then, of course, Baba was delivering that 34 lectures to them. Not that they would get it, but I think they would play the role of audience for Baba's lectures. So it's a give and giver. So perhaps they played important role in that aspect. But it was all heart, I think. What Baba taught to Prem Ashram boy is how to love him. How to love him through your inner heart. And how do you find your inner heart? I mean, inner heart, Del, we call it Del. I'm sure you guys call it that too, but it's Del. It's that solar plexus, whatever chakra, okay? It's above your belly, you know. Now I'm blank. Anyway, so that's what Baba taught to them, that to sit down and meditate for hours and hours and hours and lose themselves in the master. So there wasn't any more of them left. It was all master. So what Prem Ashram boy learned during this time is how to love Baba. And we could clearly see it in this Esfandiar. He was definitely the resemblance of Baba's love. That was it. That's all Baba was doing, teaching them how to love him.
Okay,
Yeah,
so he was in Aspendia. After it was in Los Angeles, and so how old was he when he was meeting and is he still in LA now?
no. When he was Zoroastrian, you know, so a lot
Hmm.
of these kids were Zoroastrian and Muslim. But
Okay.
so Beidul, who happens to be his uncle, you know, they're all related. Agha Beidul comes, based on Baba's instruction, comes to Iran and pick up, I mean, put together 14 boys, 14 boys, ages between 9 to 12.
Correct.
And
That's
he
mentioned.
was one
That's
of them.
mentioned here. Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of them. And then bring them, you know, at that time it was an airplane, so they came through bus and ships and all that. So he brought them to Baba, and that was when the Meher Ashram was opened. Yeah. And then you back to your question, how old was he? When we were with him, he was about 86-year old. 86-year old. But he's no longer in the body. He
Okay.
wanted to go back to Iran and die there for, I think, a spiritual upliftment of the country. So he went and he died in Yazd, and he's buried there. So he's no longer with us. In fact, he died in November 25, uh, 2005. That's when he died in Iran. Yeah.
Lovely.
Anyway,
Thank you. Thank you. That's very
yeah.
good context. because I asked because I think I met his son in Mehrabad, but that was in the last 4 or 5 years. And I was trying to construct the timeline because 1920s, he must have been in his 16, 17, whatever, or younger.
Yeah.
And then if you met him in LA, I was trying to, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, what do you think? The others have any comments? What was Baba doing here? What do we to take away from this?
Notice here what Baba says. These are very important. He says Ali is the link through whom, in the bottom, before this message finishes, Ali is the link through whom newcomers will also get the light of love.
Yeah,
So, without Ali, there wouldn't be any Meher Ashram. His role, just his role, not himself. His
yeah,
role was a very key role. And like Baba explained, he was the link
yeah,
between Baba and the newcomers. Yeah.
absolutely. I think so too. So, yeah. Um, so, by the way, I'd like to rotate the reading if anybody wants to read now. Ashok, do you want to take on reading for some time?
I will read afterwards. Ashok can take over.
Sure. Please go ahead, Mama. So, then again,
Then again, sometime in the same month, I remember once having heard the master conveying these words. Now, at least for 2 months, all will go on as usual, as it was in the beginning of the ashram. Play, school studies, etc. No spiritual demonstration. I will not let an outburst happen in the meantime. I know these words of Master are hard to be understood fully by the average reader, and their true significance would go home to those only who are deeply interested in spirituality. But this much is clear from them. If we also remember the twice quoted remarks of the Master, it will all have to be done afresh. That the final touch towards giving the lovers the light of love is withheld for certain reasons.
What does Baba
Include
mean has to be done afresh, you think?
so he
don't
says this. Yeah, he says this a few days before the. I think in this chapter, this phrase appears. So I think this whole episode of Ali and his parents are also in some way a part of his work in creating the resistance to embracing the master's love. And I
Yeah.
think the doing it afresh is starting from scratch after Ali returns. So the third week of March, when he returns, I think it's in some way the process which was suspended is actually set aside, and he starts again with whatever he's doing. That's what I take away.
Yeah, and then he says uh, the final touch towards giving the lovers the light of love is withheld for certain reasons. Although Baba says it will all have to be done afresh, like in another way, but the light of love still would be withheld
Yeah,
during this time. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Including the devil's work and also the others of awaiting the result of the invitation to the West, that although no new love spark sprinkling will be done, yet since the final outburst was untimely checked, the final process will have to be done all over again and had been done in the month of December 1927.
Wow.
Month of
So
December
in a way,
1927.
when Ali left, it was a kind of pause in this continuous work of Baba. It looks like, I don't know.
Yeah, it set the clock back.
Yeah.
Yes.
And very clearly, he anticipated it, and he also knew that he will come back this first time. So this Jan to March period was something that was intense, but also including a certain amount of pain and this separation part. Yeah.
If I may add one more thing, this is very also important. Ali's father also played a very important role in this whole work. Ali, without an opposing father, could not play his role right for Baba. For me, and that this is my little understanding, and I may be wrong. See, when Baba always would say, Maya is resisting, Maya is resisting, doesn't let me to release my universal work, because all this time he was in the body, he did his universal work. This was only 2 years of it. So for me, all those opposition and ridiculing and all that, it was, he played the role of Maya, opposing master's work. See, that's the duality that creation and its causes also talks about it. It had to be there. That opposition had to be there for love to grow and that light of love to be transferred to these boys. So it's hard to know how the master works, but this seems to be, it's like Baba, Bar Kalchuri was saying, Baba had 4 Judases, 4, and we know 3 of them. But Baba said, or maybe he was Christ, Baba said, I love my Judas. I love my Judas is very important for me when he was Christ, and even during this Advent. So anyway, it's very complicated. They worked very hard for us.
So tell me, would you remember who are the 3 Judases that, and is it Baba's quote that he has said 4 Judases?
If you do Lord Meher, if you search Lord Meher, there are a place, I've seen only one place. That doesn't mean I know all Lord Meher. I know here and there a little bit. And but 2 of them, if I can remember, well, one of them was very clear, and that was Colonel Irani.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Colonel Irani that Baba said is doing great work. By that, people would remember me and get to know me. And the other one is a man named Paul Burton.
Oh, Paul Brunton. Paul Brunton. Yes,
Brunton.
he also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He wrote about Baba, and he was a very respected Western author, but he wrote negatively about Baba at a time when Indian spirituality and Vedanta was actually being received positively. He wrote negatively in a chapter about Baba. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And there was one more that right now because I always wanted to know who is the 4th one, but right now I don't have a presence of mind. When I remember, I would say, but there are 3 that I knew of. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so we have a last para to be read, yes, before we.
Yet at the time, none could catch the significance of the remark, doing it afresh in the deep sense in which it was meant, as the following chapter will show.
Wow. So there is a hint now. So your question is getting answered.
Yeah.
So let's get to chapter 13. Mamaji, you can continue for some more time. Yeah.
Chapter 13, the inevitable reaction. After the 7th of March 1928, we know the spectacular demonstration of love had ceased at Meherabad. Hence, the atmosphere naturally became very dull, and the Meher Ashram looked what a worldly institution of its kind would do to a spiritually minded person. For all its fine surroundings, tip top arrangements, and comforting facilities, besides the occasional sidelights and glimpses of that which is unfelt and unseen through the external medium of the body, that the select few got now and then from the master during the full blaze of the love season had also ceased, although in their little hearts the fire of love went on smouldering silently but surely. Of course, these smiles were often explained to the point of almost satisfactory conviction, the reason as to why a gap for a certain period was quite necessary pending the arrival of the right moment. Yet the agony in their hearts often during this gap used to prove too much for them to bear. Hence, impatience and distraction ruled supreme. Many of them at times used to go to the length of biting themselves, tearing their clothes, crying loudly, and running away, refusing to come near the master and even directly disobeying him. The writer remembers witnessing a touching incident in this connection. Once during this period, one of the most intelligent and at the same time deeply affected, a Hindu boy of about 16 named Lobhaji, was brought before the master by his attendant after getting him back from a random escapade. The master patted him and once again tried to convey to him to wait for some time for getting his internal thirst quenched. After lengthy explanations, Lobhaji could blurt out but one word in reply to the master, and it was a very powerful no. Not only did he utter this negation, but gave such a shake to his head at that time, as if he meant to make every part of his body to produce an echo of his emphatic no. All right, don't wait so long. I will give you next week, conveyed the master. But again, Lobaji's head shook sideways without even bringing out that piquant no. Well, if you are so very keen, be sure to get the site tomorrow. Never fear, I will give it to you for a certainty. Again conveyed the master through his fast moving fingers on the alphabet book card. And this time Lobaji's sphinx like silence was broken. I want the site today, now, at this moment, were the simple but emotional words that came from his twitching lips. Even the ideal of the institution, the hero, could not keep his fine record of obedience untarnished during this reactionary period and was marked disobeying and behaving rudely with the master on more than one occasion. But still, even in his disobedience, Ali proved himself quite unlike the rest of the crowd. Of course, all repented their disobedience to the master as soon as they regained their composures, but Ali's remorse used to be very singular. One evening, at the impulse of the moment, Ali openly rebelled against the master. But the following morning, his pillow was found actually drenched with tears of repentance and remorse. Nay, the night watchman reported that Ali did not at all sleep that night. But the master had to suffer no less than his little lovers through this disheartening gap in the workings. Besides hours of botheration in explaining and bringing round these boys, he also had to put up patiently with their rough behavior, with the result that his well-worn black coat, made out of a rough blanket called kamli, which is the only one that His Holiness is pleased to use since 1922, was torn to shreds and had to be repatched at so many places, since he did not and does not think it necessary to change it to this day. While once these crack lovers in their enthusiasm accidentally overturned the master's rickshaw when giving him a ride to their heart's delight, whereby causing many a scratch and abrasion to the master's already weak and frail person due to the prolonged fasting. This reaction itself, besides whatever other reasons the master might have, justifies the necessity of splitting the Meher Ashram into two separate sections, as was done on the 25th of March 1928. The lovesick and the other promising boys were isolated from the rest, and form since formed the new division aptly named Premashram, or the abode of love. The only difference between these two sections of the Meher Ashram is in certain details only. For example, the quarters of the Premashram is next to the master's seat, whereas the Meher Ashram proper is some distance away from it. Again, Premashramites are governed by special rules which allow them to occupy themselves in divine contemplation most of the time. But all the same, they are made to pay the necessary attention to their physical well-being and secular education, while a certain period in the evening is fixed for their daily recreation, when they, like the rest of the ashramites, enjoy outdoor games, or whenever circumstances allow, go for a walk with the master himself. In spite of these special privileges and close contact of the master, on the 25th of April 1928, the reaction amongst the boys went so high that the master had actually to threaten the premi loving boys with a close-up of the Premashram, and even some actual steps were taken towards merging the same into the Meher Ashram proper. But eventually they were pardoned by the master with a serious warning, after one and all of them but bitterly wept, regretting their unruly conduct.
Interesting. So that brings us to the end of chapter 13, and we start chapter 14. I just wanted to put out a thought that I had in my head since the time Mahu said the working of Maya, right? So how does one comprehend the working of Maya in the context of the Advent itself, right? So, how does the principle of Maya impact, and how much of influence and control does Baba have over that? So, is just Probably any comments or thoughts from all of you?
Before we go for that, there's a decision to make some sort of a bifurcation in the ashram school into Prem Ashram and other section. Maybe Baba's identification of the different grades of the souls that were in the ashram, and those who are, say, actually more towards spirituality, and those who are not so adept at that moment to catch on to spirituality. Maybe there was something working in the mind of the master regarding this, probably, if I am not mistaken. The way
I dare say it's more the types of the souls. I think both the schools were surely students of spirituality, but probably those more attuned to the ways of the heart were pushed to Premashram, and
yes,
the others who were probably dominated by the mind were probably in the other one. But I mean, we'll find out more because he has barely made the distinction in the earlier chapter. So I don't know whether to assume that. But I think both were spiritual students for sure. But the focus of the spirituality was either the heart or rather than focus, dominance of the heart or dominance of the mind, right? That's my thought.
probably. That may be probably a good explanation, I think.
Yeah.
The fact of Maya's force and Baba's
Avatar, yeah.
avataric attraction towards spirituality. In case of the Ali experience, Baba could have snatched Ali in a jiffy, I think, being a master. But he actually left it to the, say, the surroundings and the parents, environment, and everything for them to, say, take some time to adjust and then try to give that boy the escape route. So I think there is a gradual sort of weaning away the effects of Maya into the, say, spiritual fold. You cannot just like that drag somebody out of this. They have to understand the, say, nitty-gritties of these things and then willingly come out of that. And the environment also should, in some way or the other, help that weaning away. That is the way I saw the episode of the parent and the family after fighting so strongly, giving up at the end, gradually over a period of time. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. But I'm not even looking at it. I totally agree with what you said, but I'm looking at it more in the overall picture of things, right? So I think Maya, if you look at again discourses, it's almost like it's a counterpart of God, and it has a role in, and it works right through, right? So yeah, of course, I agree with what you said. It's in the context of the few chapters that we're reading and this part of Baba's life. But the role of Maya continues and also preceded right from the beginning of Baba's advent right to the last, where there were many things that one would assume in a jiffy, like you said, Baba could have taken care of it, but he went through a lot of uh, ups and more often downs, which were intriguing to the followers and lovers who knew that he was capable of doing it, like you said, in a jiffy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I have a comment to make about Maya.
sure.
Okay, so Maya in a larger spectrum as I mentioned, is very necessary for Baba's work. Uh, it doesn't, it doesn't end to that. The way that Baba has created all this cosmology is he wants us as an aspirant to get to know Maya, to understand Maya before we understand the truth. It's that important. Why? Why do we have to go? That is the involution of consciousness. Okay, which takes a long, long time, because at the end we have to arrive in the state of self-knowledge. We have to become God. So we have to know what is right, what is wrong. We have to know, for example, through this, growth, we could understand that necessarily human love is not the way to, gain the truth at the end. It's it is the probably is the beginning. But human love is very different. Even Baba says the love of the mother for child, even the love of mother for the child or father for the child, Baba says there is an element of selfishness in it. It's not completely selfless. My child, I want my child to be this. It's this, mine, my, like that. This identification. So all his perfect masters, I think they are, holding all this universe that is having elements of truth and the opposite of it, which is Maya. They keep it going. And that's the role of Ishwar. They have to constantly, every second, they create, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and then they destroy. So this is all, it's beyond our little mind anyway. We can sit down and talk about it and hours, but at least Baba wanted us to understand it in this Advent, and he didn't reveal this information before in other Advents. But, so that's the role of Maya. And I see, like, for example, Ali's father and all the relative, as we read in the beginning, represented the role of religion in a very orthodox way, Islam. And if you look at right now, how much people are suffering because of these fanatic understanding of the religion in the name of Islam. So Baba is going through all this still, all of this. And so that was part of the opposition. That was part of the Maya. There's a little things just how Baba orchestrated this, that all of them are important, but we don't know why is it there.
I actually like what you said. So one, it's a continuous and it's a continuous process in the sense that it's there all the time, that Baba is there or creation is there, right? So there is Maya working as a counterbalance, and I think
Exactly.
the counterbalance is important as
Yes.
to see something, to go back to the I had to mix up things a little bit. Last week we read in discourses how the fish knows the importance of water only when it's out of it. So
Okay.
that seems to ring to
Great.
me in my mind, to see the need for Maya. The need for Maya is for uh, defining the canvas of what the role of God is, without which we will not know what the role of God is, or what the beauty and power and knowledge, power, bliss, and all the aspects of God are actually brought out by the countervailing counterbalancing thought and the concept of Maya. Just something that came to mind. But thanks for your explanation. That helped me get to this.
You actually, I'm glad you also mentioning this fish out of the water is very important. It brought back that part of the discourses to us too. That once you're out of it, it's like suffering. Baba says is important. Suffering is very important for spiritual progress.
Yes.
And so through that we gain muscles. We know what is right, what is wrong, and so forth. That sense of discernment we eventually develop. That's how Baba is compassionately laid out all that for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
One more aspect of this, maybe linked with this, is how do we say get out of the clutches of our sanskaras also. Maya in a way helps us and brings us towards spirituality, because the whole concept of evolution, involution, all those things what the master has told us about works only with that sanskaric binding and then unbinding. So that has its own effect and takes its own time, I think. So this has to, Baba never clutches anywhere to say sort of takes them away without any reason. So makes them come out of things. That is the beauty of how Baba works with us. Maybe he hastens the things. Maybe he is blindfolded, takes us away from those things. But he never plucks you out of the system which he has clearly explained. Jai Baba.
Well said. Well said. I think I'm so reminded that I will probably go back and listen to those readings of Maya. I also remember now that how Baba says, he explains, if you remember in part 2, I think, of Maya, how Maya is actually infinite because you don't. So he handles it beautifully in the first page of that discourse, where you would not attribute infinity to anything other than God, but then you would arguably see that attribute being associated with Maya, because as is God, and so is an equivalent counterbalancing force. And like you said, that's the way we exhaust or first expose and then exhaust or burn our sanskaras. Otherwise we
Yes.
won't have that opportunity. And that whole thing, the why for it, the why this whole drama happens, is the answer in Leela, right? So Leela is the divine sport. Why this
Yes.
whole thing is because of that. Yeah, fascinating. I think though we were reading something uh, um, uh, unconnected directly, we went to an interesting tangent of exploring the facets of Maya, and I think we understood a lot more. Okay, so we can again rotate the reading a little bit. So Ashok, are you ready to read for some time now?
Okay, Jay Baba.
Jai Baba, Jai Baba. Chapter 14.
14. The two masters meet.
Just Ashok, please remember to read it slowly.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for. So, Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Chapter 14. The two masters meet. This and the following two chapters may perhaps appear irrelevant to the reader, but since we are trying to read the mysteries of the heart through the intellect alone, there is no help for it. To explain the so called irrelevancies to the highest reach of the intellect is a work of volumes. But to avoid them totally is like presenting a body without a soul. The soul, or that mysterious something in man whose presence or absence makes him appear as alive or dead, is a thing of mere theoretical conjecture for the most of us. But just because we cannot understand as we ought to, and as we all shall have to, this essential side of human existence, we do not eschew the rest as irrelevant. There are thousands who think they know or understand Shakespeare thoroughly, while in fact they only talk of the material or intellectual side of Shakespeare, barring the few that know what Shakespeare really was. Even Shakespeare did not know himself fully, and through one of the master's stray hints, I can say, does not know to this day, wherever he may be. The world at large is trying to read the book of life from the wrong end, but this is quite a separate subject by itself. To cut it short, the reader would do well to form his own sequence for this strong narrative as it suits his fancy and faculty, leaving out the irrelevancies to be enjoyed by those who understand them. With these introductory words, I would commence narrating the event that forms the heading of this chapter.
So it's a strange narrative, not a strong narrative. And then the chapter title again is The Two Masters Meet. So intriguing introduction being set up. So let's continue.
Is there a title above this? So once again,
Yeah. So this title is basically The Two Masters
the
Meet.
two
This
masters.
chapter. Yeah.
Just at the right moment, when the reactionary feelings were wildly rampant, as if to comfort the impatient little lovers like Ali, the master of the master herself turned up at Mehrabad. Her Holiness Hazrat Bawazan of Pune, who holds India-wide reputation and prominence, and who is one of the two masters of the master, paid a visit to Mehrabad on the 1st of April 1928. Must say that the who in has a capital W. It is rightly remembered as a red letter day at Mehrabad. Hazrat Bawazan has been staying at Pune for the last 25 years, but for the frequent drives around the city cantonment and the suburbs of Pune. She has never been reported to have left that place during all these years. And the first time that Her Holiness was pleased to go out was to visit, to quote her own words, the place of my child. A week prior to this all important event, the master had received a letter from one of his disciples at Pune to the effect that Her Holiness was constantly remembering Ahmednagar and referring to her child, and perhaps may come down one of these days. Yet no one was prepared for this pleasant, for this great, pleasant and inspiring surprise. It had never happened in the master's short but already eventful history that either of his great gurus had ever condescended to pay him the unique distinction and privilege of a visit in person. To the best of my information, a God realized master coming all the way to his or her perfect pupil's place is perhaps unparalleled in the spiritual history of the world. At about 11:30 that morning, a car came sweeping along the road and stopped just by the Hazrat Babajan High School. Hazrat Babajan graced that car. Send a chit to my child soon were the simple words that Hazrat Babajan let out on arrival, but they were enough to send a thrill of miracle into those who knew the circumstances prevailing at Mehrabad. Since the master had imprisoned himself over the hill near the Meher Ashram, a practice had come into vogue to announce visitors before allowing them direct to the master's presence. And this used to be done through printed slips, specially got ready for this purpose, according to the following specimen. Meherabad, date, visitor, name, address. On, on this slip, the name of the visitor, the place he or she hailed from, the duration of the proposed stay, and the purpose of the visit used to be scribbled in short and forwarded to the master for further instructions by the Meherabad superintendent or the one acting for that at the time. Mr. F.N. Driver, better known as Padri of the master's earliest and trusted disciples, happened to be the acting superintendent on this occasion. His keen sense of humor caused him to act quite literally to the great master's command, and he just noted down Hazrat Babazan from Pune on the slips and at once forwarded the same to the master. The effect that a slip, when it reached the master, caused among those present there was dramatic. Many were speechless with mixed feelings of pleasure and wonder, and some looked staring blankly as if trying to make sure whether it was only a dream or an actual reality. But none forgot to remember the peculiar action of the master that very morning, which showed that at least he was quite prepared for this happy event. Probably the same moment that Babajan left Pune at about 15 minutes past 8 that morning, the master here at Meherabad left using his sandals for the first time and began to go about barefooted. On receipt of the message, the master at once hurried down the hill without using the then inevitable rickshaw, but stopped on the other side of the railway line, which divided the boundaries of the Meher Ashram and Meherabad proper. About 50 yards from the spot where Babajan's car was stopping, and ordered all the boys and disciples to pay their long due respects and love to his own master. The master kept standing all the time that Hazrat Babajan was pleased to stop there. In the course of many remarks and discussions that the master had with the disciples after the departure of Hazrat Babajan, he also conveyed, "This is the most eventful day of my career, and I would like to add, eventful career." I would remark that here that by way of paying a return visit, the master went to Pune, and then the very next day, then those who accompanied him had not to go a long way for paying their respects to Hazrat Babajan, as she was already present near her usual Band garden seat that morning. Thus, after a very long time, the master had left Meherabad bodily for an outstation, a move that proved a forerunner to his contemplated change from Ahmednagar described in chapter 15. Just a fortnight after this memorable visit of Hazrat Babajan, the fasting that the master had continued without a break from the 10th of November 1927, just before setting the Meher Ashram all flame with love, was now tightened and heightened with additional self-imposed restrictions from the 15th of April 1928. However, this intensifying of his apparent asceticism soon proved to be the last flickering of the dying lamp that goes out without a bold flame. Within a few days, the master began to let out hints that if a certain number of persons offered to remain on fast for a certain period, he might reconsider his decision of remaining without food. This was enough to stir the disciples, and especially those attached to him through inborn love, to bestow themselves into action. Mr. K.J. Dastur took the lead and soon succeeded in making him come to definite terms. 200 persons should observe a fast for 24 hours, and then I will take food, dictated the master. Accordingly, on the 25th of April, 200 persons remained completely without food, save water and tea without milk for 24 hours. The master too followed suit and only took a few sips of the same tea that day. The fast terminated on the morning of 25th, but the master would not take food. Let me serve you all first with the food, then I will partake of it myself, were the noble words that His Holiness conveyed in an unconcerned, matter of fact tone. It was about 9 in the morning that for the first time after 5 months and 15 days, he took a few morsels of solid food, curry and rice.
Wow, 5 months and 15 days.
The, it's really very, I mean, of course, spiritual, but it needs a lot of resolve.
Hmm. Okay, I think given that the next chapter is the next page, I think we'll stop here, given we have 4 minutes only, and probably use the time to discuss. Ashish, you have been quiet. Nomita, welcome back. So,
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Everybody.
Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba. Stopped.
What is that? You, what were you saying?
I said Jai Baba.
Okay,
What else to say?
indeed. Okay, so it's a interesting read. Oh, we have a young guest. Hello.
Where is the young guest?
With
Can't you
Mamaji.
see with Mamaji? Mamaji's
Oh, now
grand niece, or how do I describe it in English? I don't know.
I don't know. I
Hello.
can't see any people. I can see no one.
Oh, we can. So you'll have to probably change. Let me stop sharing the screen as well and probably stop recording.
Oh my God. Mamaji has been busy. Welcome back, Mamaji.